The crystal wine glasses clinked as Alex raised his for what felt like the 100th patronizing toast of the evening. I gripped mine tighter, forcing a smile as I watched my older brother command the attention of every executive seated around our family's mahogany dining table. I'm Audrey, the youngest of the Hunt siblings, though sometimes I wonder if anyone remembers I exist. Tonight was supposed to be a casual family dinner, but like everything else in our world, it turned into another business meeting. To streamlining operations and cutting the dead weight, Alex announced, his eyes flickering briefly to mine. The message wasn't subtle. Here, Michaela, my sister, chimed in from her perfectly positioned seat at Alex's right hand. She hadn't spoken directly to me all evening, but that wasn't unusual. I took a small sip of wine, letting the bitter taste linger. The chandelier light caught the deep red liquid, reminding me of blood. Fitting, given what was about to unfold. Speaking of operations, Alex continued, setting down his glass with practiced precision, I've been reviewing the company's structure. Some departments aren't pulling their weight. Mother, Yvette to everyone else, nodded approvingly. Sometimes tough decisions are necessary for growth, darling. I couldn't help myself. Which departments specifically, Alex? The table fell silent. Even the household staff paused their quiet movements around us. Well, if you must know, Alex's smile didn't reach his eyes. International relations has been particularly disappointing. My department, of course. Interesting. I kept my voice steady, years of practice paying off. Our overseas partnerships have increased 40% since I took over. Numbers can be deceiving, little sister. Michaela's patronizing tone made my teeth clench. They certainly can be, I agreed, thinking of the shares I'd been quietly accumulating. Just like appearances. Alex's phone buzzed and he checked it immediately. Another power play, showing everyone that his time was more valuable than this conversation. I have some calls to make. Excellent dinner, Mother. As he stood, others followed suit like well-trained puppets. I remained seated, watching them file out, their chatter fading toward the study where the real business would be discussed. No invitation extended to me, as usual. Audrey, dear. Mother lingered behind, her perfectly manicured hand resting on my shoulder. You know how things work here. Some roles are just better suited to certain people. I covered her hand with mine, feeling the expensive rings beneath my fingers. I know exactly how things work, Mother. Better than you might think. She squeezed my shoulder once and left, her heels clicking against the hardwood floors. The sound echoed in the empty dining room, but the silence that followed was deafening. My phone vibrated with a text from Michael. Meeting set for tomorrow. V's interested. A genuine smile crossed my face for the first time that evening. While they were all busy underestimating me, I'd been building my own network. Tomorrow's meeting with Vincenzo could change everything. The household staff began clearing the table around me. Maria, who'd worked for us since I was a child, paused beside me. Miss Audrey, your brother left these papers. She discreetly slid a folder toward me that Alex had accidentally forgotten. I opened it to find exactly what I expected. A proposal to dissolve my department, effective immediately. Classic Alex, leaving it for me to find instead of having the courage to hand it to me directly. Thank you, Maria. I stood, tucking the folder under my arm. Would you mind bringing coffee to my study? I have a long night ahead. Of course, miss. And she hesitated, lowering her voice. I heard Mr. Alex talking earlier about the board meeting next month. He's planning something big. I nodded, grateful for the intel. You're a gem, Maria. Thank you. Walking past the study, I could hear them laughing, probably congratulating themselves on another successful power play. They had no idea I'd been recording every meeting, documenting every questionable decision, and building a case that would make their heads spin. In my own study, the smallest one naturally, I opened my laptop and began drafting emails. My phone buzzed again, this time from Harper. Got the documents you needed. You won't believe what I found. Perfect. While they were busy playing their games, I was about to change all the rules. They thought I was the family failure, the unlucky one, the baby sister who couldn't possibly understand their complex business world. They were about to learn how wrong they were. I pulled up the shareholders registry, allowing myself a small smile at the numbers I'd been carefully adjusting for months. Alex wanted to talk about dead weight? Fine. Let's see how he feels when the rug gets pulled out from under him. The game was on, and for once, I had all the right pieces. The coffee shop buzzed with morning activity as I slid into the corner booth across from Michael. His tie was slightly crooked, a deliberate choice, I knew, to make others underestimate him. We had that in common. "You're looking particularly pleased with yourself," he said, sliding a manila envelope across the table. "Let's just say last night's family dinner went exactly as expected." I opened the envelope, scanning the documents inside. Alex took the bait. Michael grinned. Hook, line, and sinker. He's convinced Vincenzo is looking to sell his shares to him. When in reality, I trailed off, raising an eyebrow. "Vincenzo's meeting with you tomorrow at 9. Seems he's very interested in hearing about your vision for the company's future." The waitress approached, and we paused our conversation. After ordering, I pulled out my phone, showing Michael the text from Harper. "Look what she found," I said, sliding the phone across the table. His eyes widened as he read. "Alex has been cooking the books in the Asian market division. That's exactly what we needed," I finished. "And there's more. Harper's coming by later with the full report." The bell above the door chimed, and I instinctively glanced up. My heart stopped. Michaela walked in, her designer heels clicking against the floor. "Down," I hissed, sliding lower in my seat. Michael casually raised his newspaper, shielding us from view. Michaela ordered her usual complicated drink and left without noticing us. Once the door closed behind her, I let out a breath. "That was close," Michael said, lowering the paper. "Speaking of close, how are we on the share count?" I pulled out my tablet, bringing up a spreadsheet. With Harper's shares and mine combined, we're at 23%. If Vincenzo agrees, we'll have 48%. Michael whistled low, just shy of controlling interest, which is why we need the evidence Harper found. It's not just about the shares anymore. We need the board's support. My phone buzzed, a message from Harper. "Meet me at the usual place. You need to see this now." "I've got to go," I said, gathering my things. "Harper's found something big." Michael nodded. "Be careful. Alex has been asking questions about your lunch meetings." "Let him ask. He's so convinced of my incompetence, he'll never see it coming." 20 minutes later, I walked into the small bookstore cafe where Harper was already waiting, her laptop open and a worried expression on her face. "You're not going to believe this," she said without preamble, turning the screen toward me. I scanned the emails displayed there, my blood running cold. "He's been embezzling? Through shell companies?" "Not just embezzling," Harper pointed to a specific email chain. "He's been using the money to bribe officials in Singapore. If this gets out, the company's reputation would be destroyed." I sat back, processing the implications. No wonder he's so desperate to consolidate power. "There's something else." Harper's voice dropped lower. "Your mother's signature is on some of these documents." The revelation hit me like a physical blow. "She knew? Looks like it, but Audrey—" Harper hesitated. "If you use this, it won't just take down Alex. Your mother could face charges too." I stared at my coffee, watching the steam rise. "They made their choices, Harper. They chose to exclude me, to treat me like I was nothing, and now their choices are going to cost them everything." "Miss Hunt?" a voice interrupted us. I turned to see one of Vincenzo's assistants standing there, looking nervous. "Mr. Brown asked me to deliver this to you personally." She handed me an envelope and hurried away. Inside was a single sheet of paper with a handwritten note. "Meeting moved up. Tonight, 8 p.m. my office, come alone. V." "This is it," Harper said, reading over my shoulder. "Are you ready?" I thought about last night's dinner, about years of condescending smiles and closed doors, about Alex's smug face as he planned to dismantle my department, about my mother's complicity in all of it. "I've been ready my whole life," I replied, gathering the evidence Harper had found. "By this time tomorrow, everything changes." As I stood to leave, Harper grabbed my arm. "Just remember what you told me when we started this. Don't let revenge consume you. Make this about justice, not just payback." I squeezed her hand. "It's about both. They're going to learn that the little sister they ignored wasn't as helpless as they thought." Walking out into the afternoon sun, I checked my phone to find 3 missed calls from Alex. Let him worry. In less than 24 hours, he'd have much bigger problems than wondering where his baby sister was having lunch. The game was entering its final phase, and I held all the cards. Now it was just a matter of playing them right. Vincenzo's office felt colder than usual as I sat across from him, Watching him review the documents I'd brought, the city lights twinkled through the floor-to-ceiling windows behind him, creating an almost theatrical backdrop. This is... He paused, adjusting his reading glasses. Quite something, Audrey. It's all verified, I said, keeping my voice steady. Every transaction, every shell company, every bribe. He leaned back in his chair, studying me. You understand what you're asking? Going against your own family? They stopped being family the moment they decided to destroy everything our father built. I met his gaze. The company deserves better than Alex's corruption. The intercom buzzed, making us both jump. Mr. Brown, Mr. Hunt is here to see you. My heart stopped. Vincenzo's eyes widened slightly, but he maintained his composure. Send him to the conference room. Tell him I'll be there shortly. He turned to me. The private elevator, quickly. I gathered my documents, but before I could reach the door, it burst open. Alex stood there, his usually perfect hair slightly disheveled. Well, well, he said, his smile not reaching his eyes. What a surprise finding my baby sister here. Alex, Vincenzo stood. This isn't the conference room. Clearly. Alex stepped inside, closing the door behind him. I thought we had an understanding, Vincenzo, about the shares. We had a discussion, Vincenzo corrected. Nothing was finalized. Alex's gaze shifted to the papers in my hands. What's that, sister dear? More quarterly reports you don't understand? Actually, I held them tighter. They're copies of wire transfers. Fascinating reading, especially the ones to Singapore. The color drained from Alex's face. You're bluffing. Am I? I pulled out one document, holding it up. This signature looks familiar. Mother's penmanship is quite distinctive, isn't it? Alex moved faster than I expected, grabbing my arm. You have no idea what you're playing with. Remove your hand, I said quietly, or the next meeting will be with the SEC. You wouldn't dare. It would destroy the company. No, I corrected him. It would destroy you. The company would survive, under new leadership. Vincenzo cleared his throat. Alex, I believe we should reschedule our meeting. You're choosing her? Alex's grip tightened on my arm. The family failure? My phone buzzed in my pocket, our prearranged signal from Michael, right on time. Speaking of failure, I smiled, you might want to check the evening news. Someone anonymously tipped off the press about certain irregularities in the Asian market division. Alex's phone started ringing, then Vincenzo's, then mine. What did you do? Alex released my arm, grabbing his phone. Me? Nothing. I straightened my jacket. I'm just the incompetent little sister, remember? Vincenzo's assistant burst in. Sir, the press is calling. They're asking about Singapore. You little snake, Alex hissed at me. Mother will never forgive this. Funny, I moved toward the door. I stopped caring about her forgiveness when I found her signature on those bribes. Alex's phone kept ringing. Michaela's name flashed on the screen. This isn't over. You're right, I agreed. The board meeting's tomorrow. Consider this just the opening act. As I walked out, I heard Alex's voice rise in panic as he finally answered his phone. In the elevator, I let out a shaky breath, checking my messages. Michael. News is breaking. Stock's already dropping in after hours trading. Harper. Board members are calling emergency meetings. They want answers. And finally, one from Mother. We need to talk, now. I stepped out into the lobby just as the first news vans pulled up outside. Perfect timing. Let them catch Alex leaving the building in panic mode. It would make tomorrow's reveal even more dramatic. My phone rang again. Mother. This time I answered. How dare you? She began. No, I cut her off. How dare you? You and Alex betrayed everything Dad stood for. We did what was necessary to protect the company. You did what was easy, and now you'll both pay for it. I'm still your mother, she said, her voice hard. And I'm still a Hunt, I replied. You taught me well. Family first, remember? I'm just protecting the family legacy. The right way. I hung up as my car arrived. Tomorrow's board meeting would be explosive, but tonight's news was just the fuse. Alex thought he could bully me into submission. Mother thought her signature on those documents meant something. They were about to learn that the quiet one, the overlooked one, the family failure had been watching and learning all along. And unlike them, I'd learned the right lessons. The city lights blurred as my driver pulled away from the curb. Behind us, the media circus was just beginning. Ahead lay tomorrow's reckoning, and I was ready for all of it. Sleep wasn't an option. At 3 a.m., I sat in my home office watching the news coverage spiral. My phone hadn't stopped buzzing since leaving Vincenzo's office. Then came the knock I'd been expecting. "Come in, Michaela." My sister stormed in, still wearing her evening gown from whatever charity event she'd been attending. "What the hell have you done?" "Would you like a drink?" I gestured to the whiskey decanter. "You look like you could use one." "Don't play games," she snapped, but took the offered glass anyway. "The stock's down 12% in Asian markets. Alex is locked in emergency meetings with the lawyers. Mother's not answering her phone." Sounds like a typical Tuesday for the family that has everything under control. Michaela slammed her glass down. "This isn't a joke, Audrey. Do you have any idea what I'm doing?" I finished. "Actually, for the first time in this family's history, I'm the only one who does." My phone lit up with a text from Michael. "Alex making moves. Emergency board meeting called for 8 a.m. "He's trying to get ahead of it," I murmured. "What?" "Alex. He's called an emergency board meeting, trying to control the narrative." Michaela's perfectly maintained facade cracked slightly. "How did you know that?" "I just got the notification." "Because, dear sister, I know everything, including what you've been hiding for Alex." She paled. "I don't know what you're talking about." I opened my laptop, turning it toward her. "The shell company in Malaysia, the one registered under your husband's name? Very clever, almost untraceable." That's not. Your signature's on those documents too, Michaela, right next to Mother's." She sank into the chair across from me. "You don't understand. Alex said it was the only way to keep the Asian contracts. We were losing ground to competitors. So you decided fraud was the answer?" I pulled up another document. "Or was it when you started funneling money through that charitable foundation you set up?" The color drained from her face completely. "How long have you known?" "Long enough to document everything. Long enough to build an ironclad case. Long enough to secure the support we need." "We?" The door opened again, and Michael walked in. Michaela's eyes widened in recognition. "You," she whispered. "You're supposed to be in London." "Supposed to be," Michael agreed, loosening his tie. "Just like those charitable donations were supposed to be legitimate." My phone buzzed again. Harper this time. "SEC officially notified. They're opening an investigation first thing tomorrow." "It's over, Michaela," I said quietly. "The only question is whether you want to go down with Alex or help me fix this mess." "Fix it?" She laughed bitterly. "You've just destroyed everything." "No, I've exposed the rot. There's a difference." I leaned forward. "The company can survive this, but only with new leadership. Clean leadership." "You?" She scoffed. "The board would never—" "The board," Michael interrupted, "has already seen the evidence. They're meeting now, actually. Virtually, of course. Time zones and all that." Michaela's phone chimed. Probably the board notification. She checked it, and I watched her face change as she read. They're suspending Alex pending investigation?" "That's just the beginning," I said. "In about 4 hours, they'll be voting on new leadership, and I have the shares to make it stick." "Impossible. Alex controls what he thinks he controls," Michael corrected. "The proxy votes have already been submitted." Michaela stood suddenly, swaying slightly. "I need to call Alex." "You can," I nodded. "Or you can save yourself. There's still time to do the right thing." "The right thing?" She laughed again, but it sounded hollow. "Since when did you become the moral compass of this family?" "Since everyone else lost theirs." Her phone started ringing, Alex's face lighting up the screen. She stared at it, then at me, then back at the phone. "Think carefully, sister," I said softly, "about your next move, about your future, about your children's future." Her hand trembled as she declined the call. "What do you want from me?" she whispered. "The truth. All of it. In writing. Tonight." She sank back into the chair. "He'll never forgive me." "Probably not," I agreed. "But your kids might someday if you do the right thing now." Michael placed a laptop in front of her. "Shall we begin?" As Michaela started typing, her hands shaking but determined, my phone lit up with another message from Harper. "Alex just tried to access the offshore accounts. They're frozen, just like we planned. I watched my sister document years of fraud and deception, each word another nail in Alex's coffin. The sun would rise soon, bringing with it a new era for the company and for our family, whether they were ready for it or not. The boardroom was eerily quiet as I walked in at 7:45 a.m. Only Mother sat there, perfectly poised despite the early hour and obvious lack of sleep. "I always wondered which one of my children would try to take the throne," she said, not looking up from her tablet. "I just never expected it to be you." Disappointed? Surprised? She finally met my eyes, and somewhat impressed, if I'm being honest. "Save the maternal pride, Mother. We both know why you're here early." She smiled thinly. "To negotiate? To beg." The door opened and Alex burst in, looking like he'd aged 10 years overnight. His usually impeccable suit was wrinkled, his eyes wild. "You treacherous little—" He started toward me, but Mother's voice cut through the air like a whip. "Sit down, Alex." He froze, then slowly took a seat, his hands shaking as he adjusted his tie. "Michaela sent me some very interesting documents last night," I said, pulling out my laptop. She was quite thorough, even included the recordings. "Recordings?" Alex's voice cracked. "Of every board meeting where you discussed the bribes, every phone call about the shell companies, every conversation about covering it up." I turned to Mother. "Including your instructions on how to hide the money trails." "Those recordings are inadmissible," Mother said calmly. "Private conversations are perfectly admissible when they document criminal conspiracy." Michael's voice came from the doorway as he entered. "The SEC's lawyers confirmed that an hour ago." Alex lunged across the table, but I was ready. The recording device in my pocket was already running. "Touch me," I said quietly, "and assault charges will be the least of your problems." "You've destroyed everything," he snarled. "No, Alex, you did that. I'm just cleaning up the mess." The board members began filing in, their faces grim. Vincenzo entered last, nodding slightly to me. "Before we begin," Mother stood, her voice commanding attention, "I'd like to propose—" "Sit down, Yvette," Vincenzo cut her off. "You're here as a courtesy, nothing more." Her face flushed, but she sat. For the first time in my life, I saw fear in her eyes. "The board has reviewed the evidence," Vincenzo continued. "We've also received Ms. Michaela's sworn statement. The vote will proceed as scheduled." "What vote?" Alex demanded. "I'm still CEO." "Actually," Michael interrupted, distributing documents, "you were suspended at 4 a.m. Eastern Time. The Asian markets made that decision necessary." I watched Alex scan the paper, his face growing paler with each line. "These proxy numbers, they're impossible. You controlled what we let you think you controlled," I said. "Remember all those small shareholders you ignored? The ones you called insignificant? Turns out they were quite significant when their votes were combined." Mother's hands gripped her armrests. "You've been planning this for years." I learned from the best. I met her gaze. "You always said patience was a virtue." The board members were reviewing the documents, whispered conversations filling the room. Alex's phone kept buzzing, probably his lawyers trying to reach him. "We'll fight this," he hissed. "With what money?" I asked. "The offshore accounts are frozen. The charitable foundation is under investigation. Even your personal accounts have been flagged for suspicious activity." "You can't prove—" "Actually," Harper walked in, carrying a stack of files. "We can prove everything, down to the last cent." Mother stood abruptly. "This meeting is adjourned until our lawyers—" "Sit down, Mother," I said quietly. "It's over." Vincenzo cleared his throat. "The vote will proceed. All in favor of removing Alexander Hunt from his position as CEO and appointing Audrey Hunt as interim CEO, pending full investigation?" Hands raised around the room. Alex's breathing grew ragged as he counted. Once, twice. "The motion passes," Vincenzo announced, "effective immediately." "Security will escort you out," I told Alex and Mother. "Your personal items will be sent to you after they've been reviewed by forensics." "You're having us escorted out?" Mother's voice shook. "Like criminals?" "If the shoe fits," Harper muttered. As security entered, Alex made one last desperate move. "I'll tell them everything. About Dad's real cause of death. About the cover-up." "You mean about how you altered his medication?" I cut in. "That's already in the files, Alex. Everything is in the files. His face crumpled as security took his arms. Mother walked out on her own, her head high, but I caught the slight tremor in her hands. As the door closed behind them, Vincenzo turned to me. "The floor is yours, CEO Hunt." I stood facing the board, feeling the weight of decades of corruption and lies finally lifting. "Let's begin with transparency," I said, opening my laptop. "There's a lot to fix, but we're going to do it right this time." The sun had fully risen now, streaming through the windows. A new day, a new era. And this time it would be built on truth. The press conference ended exactly as I'd planned. As reporters filed out, still shouting questions about Alex's arrest and Mother's involvement, Harper touched my arm. "You should see this," she said, holding up her phone. A video was playing. Alex being led out of his mansion in handcuffs, Mother watching from the doorway. "How the mighty fall," Michael commented, loosening his tie. SEC didn't waste any time. "They had everything they needed," I replied, straightening papers on the podium. Michaela's testimony was the final nail. "Audrey," Harper's voice was urgent now. "There's something else. Your mother, she's calling an emergency family meeting at the house." I checked my watch. "Now?" "She says it's about your father." The room fell silent. Michael stepped closer. "You don't have to go." "Yes, I do." I gathered my things. Whatever secrets are left, it's time they came out. The drive to the family estate felt longer than usual. As we pulled up, I noticed Michaela's car already there, along with Mother's lawyer's Mercedes. Maria met me at the door, her eyes red. "Miss Audrey, they're in the study." "Thank you, Maria." I squeezed her hand. "Whatever you hear, it's going to be okay." The study door was closed. I could hear voices inside, Mother's controlled tone, Michaela's higher pitch of distress. Taking a deep breath, I opened the door. Mother sat behind Father's old desk, looking smaller than I remembered. Michaela paced by the window, while James, the family lawyer, stood uncomfortably in the corner. "Finally," Mother said. "Sit down, Audrey. There are things you need to know." "About Father's death?" I remained standing. "About how Alex tampered with his medication?" "It wasn't just Alex." Michaela's voice cracked. "Mother knew. She helped cover it up." Mother's face remained impassive. "Your father was going to destroy everything we built. He discovered the initial bribes, threatened to go public. So you killed him." The words hung in the air like poison. "We adjusted his medication," Mother corrected, as if that made it better. "The heart attack was unfortunate but necessary." Michaela made a choking sound. I can't do this anymore." She turned to me. "That's why I helped you, when I found out what they did to Dad." "Enough." Mother slammed her hand on the desk. "I called you here because the police are reopening the investigation. They'll find evidence." "They already have it," I said quietly. "It was in the files I gave the SEC this morning." Mother's composure cracked. "You knew? All this time?" "I found Father's private journal 3 years ago. His suspicions about Alex, about the bribes, about you." "Then why the charade?" Mother demanded. "Why not turn us in immediately?" "Because I needed everything. Every piece of evidence, every transaction, every lie. The company couldn't survive a partial revelation." James cleared his throat. "Mrs. Hunt, given these developments, I suggest—" "You suggest nothing," Mother snapped. "You helped create those shell companies. You're as involved as any of us." "Actually," I pulled out my phone, "James has been working with me for the past year. Haven't you, James?" Mother's head whipped around to stare at her lawyer. He nodded slowly. "Your father was my friend," he said simply. "I owed him the truth." The doorbell rang distantly. Mother's hands began to shake. "That would be the police," I said. "They have questions about Father's autopsy." Michaela sank into a chair. "What happens now?" "Now?" I finally sat down. "Now the truth comes out. All of it. The company will survive. I've made sure of that. But this family? That's up to us." "Us?" Mother's laugh was bitter. "You've destroyed us." "No, Mother. You did that when you chose power over family. When you helped kill the man who built all of this." Heavy footsteps approached the study. Mother straightened her spine, that familiar mask of dignity sliding back into place. Whatever happens, she said, I did it for this family. No, I stood as the door opened, revealing two serious-faced detectives. You did it for yourself. Mrs. Yvette Hunt, one detective stepped forward. We have some questions about your husband's death. I watched as they led Mother away, Michaela sobbing quietly by the window. James gathered his files, nodding to me as he left. The study felt different now. Lighter somehow, as if decades of secrets had physically weighed down the air. On Father's desk, his old photo smiled at me, and for the first time in years, I smiled back. The truth hadn't just set me free. It had set all of us free, whether they realized it yet or not. My phone buzzed, Michael checking in. The company would need attention soon, but for now, I let myself feel the weight of this moment. The lies were over. The real work could finally begin. 1 month later, I stood in the main conference room, watching the markets react to our latest press release. The stock had stabilized, even started climbing. Transparency, it seemed, had its rewards. The SEC just released their final report, Michael said, walking in with his tablet. It's comprehensive. How bad? Alex is looking at 15 to 20 years. Mother, he hesitated. The prosecutor's offering a deal. Her testimony for a reduced sentence. She'll take it, I said, still watching the numbers scroll. Self-preservation is what she does best. The door opened again, and Michaela entered, looking different in casual clothes instead of her usual power suits. Recovery suited her. The board meeting's about to start, she said quietly. Are you sure about this? About stepping down as interim CEO? Yes. I turned to face her. The company needs a fresh start, someone without our family name. They're saying Michael's the front runner. She smiled slightly. Father would have liked that. The boardroom filled quickly. Faces that had once intimidated me now nodded in respect as I took my place at the head of the table. Vincenzo sat to my right, Michael to my left. Before we begin, I stood. I have an announcement. As you know, my appointment as interim CEO was always temporary. Today we'll be voting on permanent leadership. Murmurs filled the room. I continued. But first, there's something you need to see. I nodded to Harper, who dimmed the lights. A video began playing, Father's face filling the screen. The timestamp showed it was recorded just days before his death. If you're watching this, his voice filled the room, then the truth has finally come out. To my board members, I apologize for not seeing the corruption sooner. To my family, he paused. I hope you remember what we built this company for. It was never about power or money. It was about making a difference. Michaela wiped tears from her eyes. I kept my focus on the screen. To whoever has brought this to light, Father continued, thank you. The company's future is in your hands now. Make it count. The video ended. Silence filled the room. My father built this company on innovation and integrity, I said into the quiet. We lost our way, but thanks to many people in this room, we've found it again. I opened a folder, passing out documents. These are the nomination papers for our new CEO. Michael Lynch has been with the company for 8 years. He knows every department, every challenge, every opportunity. And the Hunt family? Someone asked. What role will you play? I'll remain on the board, I replied. But it's time for new leadership. Leadership based on merit, not bloodlines. The vote was unanimous. As Michael accepted congratulations, I slipped out onto the balcony. Harper followed. You okay? She asked, handing me a coffee. Better than okay. I watched the city below. For the first time, I feel like I can breathe. Have you visited them, Alex and your mother? Not yet. I sipped my coffee. Some wounds need time. The balcony door opened again. Michaela stepped out, holding her phone. That was the prosecutor, she said. Mother took the deal. She's going to tell them everything. Good, I nodded. It's about time. She asked about you, wants to see you. I'm sure she does. I turned back to the view. Tell her I'm busy. Running a company takes time. Michaela laughed, a real laugh, something I hadn't heard in years. You're not running it anymore, remember? No, I smiled, but I am protecting it, just like Father wanted. Inside, I could see Michael addressing the board, his passion visible even through the glass. The company was in good hands. What now? Harper asked. Now? I checked my watch. Now we have a press conference announcing Michael's appointment, then a meeting with our international partners to rebuild trust, then dinner with Vincenzo to discuss new initiatives. I meant for you, Harper clarified. What do you want now? I thought about Father's video, about Mother's deal, about Alex in his prison cell, about all the lies and secrets that had weighed us down for so long. I want to build something real, I said finally. Something honest. Father's legacy deserves that. My phone buzzed. A message from Maria. Your mother's lawyer dropped off some old photos. Found them in the study. Your father's private collection. You know, Michaela said, reading over my shoulder, we could go through them together, if you want. I looked at my sister, really looked at her. The walls were down now, the pretenses gone. Maybe that was Father's real legacy. The truth setting us free. Yeah, I said. I'd like that. Behind us, the board meeting ended. A new chapter was beginning, for the company, for our family, for all of us. And this time, we'd write it together. The prison visiting room was colder than I expected. Mother sat across from me, her designer outfit replaced by standard issue beige, but somehow she still managed to look elegant. You finally came, she said, studying my face. I had some things to finish first. I placed a manila envelope on the table between us. The last of Father's photos. I thought you might want to see them. Her hands trembled slightly as she opened it. The first photo showed all of us, Mother, Father, Alex, Michaela, and me, at the company's 20th anniversary. We were smiling. It looked real. I remember this day, she said softly. Your father was so proud. He was proud of the company, of what it stood for. I leaned forward. That's why I'm here, Mother. I need to know why, the whole truth. She set the photo down carefully. The truth? The truth is I was afraid. Your father's integrity would have bankrupted us. The market was changing, our competitors were cutting corners. So you decided to cut more than corners. We did what we thought was necessary. She met my eyes. But you found another way, didn't you? There's always another way. I pulled out another document. The company's latest earnings report. Profits are up 20%, all legitimate. She scanned the numbers, her expression softening. Michael's doing well then? Better than well. He's rebuilding everything, the right way. And Michaela? She's heading our new ethics committee. I allowed myself a small smile. Ironic, isn't it? Mother pushed the papers back toward me. And you? Are you happy, Audrey? The question caught me off guard. In all my years, she'd never asked me that. I'm at peace, I answered honestly. For the first time, I know exactly who I am and what I stand for. Like your father. She wiped a tear quickly. You know, he used to say you were the strongest of all of us. I never understood why until now. A guard approached, signaling our time was almost up. Alex wants to see you, Mother said quickly. He's in maximum security, but no. I stood. Some bridges stay burned. He's still your brother, and you're still my mother. But that doesn't change what happened. I gathered the photos, leaving one behind, the family portrait. Mother's fingers touched it gently. What happens now? She asked. Now? You serve your time. The company moves forward, and maybe someday we learn how to be a real family. Without Alex, some choices have permanent consequences. He made his. The guard stepped closer. Mother stood, straightening her uniform with the same grace she once used to adjust her designer suits. I did love you, Audrey. All of you. I just forgot what that meant somewhere along the way. I know, Mother. I touched her hand briefly. That's what makes it tragic. Outside the prison, Harper waited in the car. You okay? Better than okay. I checked my phone. A message from Michaela about the ethics committee's first successful intervention. Another from Michael about new international partnerships. The reporters are still asking for interviews, Harper said as we drove. They want the whole story. They have the story. It's in the SEC reports, the court documents, the company records. They want your story, the inside view. I watched the prison disappear in the rearview mirror. Some stories aren't meant for headlines. My phone rang. Vincenzo. The Singapore deal is signed. Clean energy initiative is a go. Father would have loved that, I said. It's exactly what he always wanted for the company. He'd be proud of you, Audrey, of what you've built from the ashes. As we pulled up to the office, I saw Michaela waiting outside. She'd started dressing more like herself lately, less like Mother's clone. Ready for the board meeting? She asked as I approached. Actually, I smiled. I thought we could get lunch first. Just us. Her face lit up. Like real sisters? Exactly like that. Inside my office, Father's photo sat on my desk. Not the family portrait, but one of just him and me in his study. I was maybe 6, sitting on his lap while he explained something about the company. My eyes were bright with interest, his with pride. That little girl had grown up to save his legacy. Not through power plays or corruption, but through truth and determination. The company would thrive. Mother would serve her time. Alex would face his consequences. And Michaela and I would learn to be sisters again. Sometimes the happy ending isn't perfect. Sometimes it's just right. Coming? Michaela called from the door. Yeah, I said, touching Father's photo one last time. I'm ready.